Welcome to the Vulnerability Rocks podcast, and my guest this week is Zara Dawson. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Emma.
This week, I am really grateful to Zara to be here because, as you guys know that follow me, I have recently gone through a loss and just completed the first trimester, which was pretty terrible. And then sadly, our baby got diagnosed with Edwards syndrome and we had to have termination for medical reasons. And since that happened to us, I have had the absolute honour of connecting with amazing women through social media, the power of social media, which I believe this is what it was actually designed for. Good people for good, not for bad. And I have experienced the very, very good side of social media and been connected with amazing mamas. And one of them is Zara, who also went through a really sad loss and termination for medical reasons. And she's coming on the show to share her story with us today. So I'm going to hand over to you.
Thank you. So I had my first little boy in 2016. He was IVF. And then a few years later, we decided to try for a sibling. We had 6 embryos frozen. And the cycle went completely to plan. It was perfect. Everything was very textbook. And we fell pregnant with our second son, Jesse. A few months into the pregnancy, I went for a scan and was told that something didn't look right. They said they'd found something on his stomach. And in that moment, my world just completely fell apart. They asked me to come back in 2 weeks to see if the stomach had closed up at all. And I just knew in that moment that I would never be bringing that baby home. And I can't even tell you how I knew, because they didn't really give me much more than that at the time. And I waited at the early pregnancy unit for hours and hours until I could speak with a consultant as opposed to the sonographer. And when I finally spoke to her, she said, well, it could be one of 3 things. The first 2 are fixable at birth. The third one would make the baby incompatible with life. And then she said, but we're not dealing with that one. And I'm still a bit cross with her for saying that, because she hadn't been in the scan. She hadn't seen a report. She was basing that on absolutely nothing. And she did give me a glimmer of hope.
Mm-hmm.
So I went home that evening, went home on the tube in London. And I just remember seeing everyone else going about their normal lives. And I just wanted to scream, because I thought, my world is imploding and you've got no idea. I mean, it's so, when you say it now, you think, well, of course they had no idea. But you know, when you just look at someone and you think, you have no idea what I'm going through. So the next day I decided I couldn't wait 2 weeks, couldn't wait a day. I booked in to have a private scan at the Portland hospital. And they saw instantly what we were facing. And the sonographer there just said, he said to Lex, he said, I've sat where you're sitting now as a dad in a scan. And I've sat where I'm sitting now as a sonographer in a scan. And what I'm about to tell you breaks my heart for you. And he said, your baby is very, very unwell and is incompatible with life. That scan is one of those things. I will never forget his face. I will never forget that when I went to pay, he wouldn't charge me. And Lex went to pieces, my husband went to pieces, and I just went into complete planning mode. So I was like, right, okay, let's get a plan in place. What do we have to do? I was very clearly pregnant as well. So I had, like we spoke about, I had all that to deal with, where people will come up and congratulate you and you just smile and not say much in response, really. So the next day I went back to the hospital and said, I can't wait 2 weeks. I've had a private scan. And I kind of demanded to see the fetal medical consultant, because I thought, I'm the one that goes home and cries myself to sleep at night, and I'm not going to do it. I'm not, if this is the inevitable, I'm not going to do that anymore. And they scanned me, and it was very clear what was wrong with our baby. He had something called body stalk anomaly, which at the time they told me it was 1 in 14,000. They now believe it to be more like 1 in 40,000. And it's non-genetic. It's literally a blip. So the way it was described to me is we start as two halves and we close up. And there was a tiny blip that happened when Jesse's body was closing up that meant it didn't close. So all of his organs were outside of his body, apart from his heart, which was beating away perfectly until the very end, which, I get comfort from that some days, and some days that makes me incredibly sad. But you just have to take from that what you do day to day, really. And then they told us that the option was to continue to carry the baby and wait for it to die naturally. But they did also tell me that his foot had started to poke out of the sac, which meant it was posing a risk to my health. Regardless of that, we'd made the decision that I couldn't continue carrying the baby for my mental health, for my son, for my husband. And we'd been through a very traumatic time getting our firstborn, with a traumatic birth that ended in intensive care, and I just couldn't do that. I just didn't have that within me. So we decided to terminate, and the option from the hospital, they could perform a medical termination for me, which is where you have to birth the baby. And they couldn't perform a surgical. They'd stopped doing it a few months prior to my date. So I just remember being in the room, and you'd got the midwife saying to me, right, we can book you in for your termination on Monday. This is what happens. This is the procedure. And then I had the fetal medicine consultant saying to me, but you can go elsewhere and get this done surgically, which was very telling, because he was really trying to tell me, my son was going to be very deformed when he came out. And I think that was a big part of it. They did tell me that he probably wouldn't be as I would wish to remember him. So I went home kind of clutching a leaflet for an abortion clinic and another leaflet for ARC, and that's it. And I set about trying to book in my termination of my son. And I remember calling around all the abortion clinics and finally finding one who could perform it for me. And it was like a small win. I kind of went, oh, great, yes. And then reality hits, like, okay, that's what that means. And I found one in Southeast London that could perform it in about a week's time. And I remember saying to them, I need to get my son's body back to the hospital for genetic testing. Can you help with that? And she said, you'll have to arrange your own courier. So there I am Googling how to transport a dead body's baby. Like, the things I was Googling that night is just, and you kind of go out of body. I wasn't particularly upset when I was Googling all this, and I was just very much in practical mode. And then the lady came back to me and she said, oh, don't worry, we will give you your son's body to take away on the day, but don't worry, it won't be in a see-through box. And again, it was that small win. It was like, oh, okay, well, that's good. Okay, well, I've got that sorted. So my son's body will be in a non-see-through box, which is great. I found a courier who can transport my dead son body back to the hospital. And it's all these things that kind of push your grief out of the way, because you're having to sort this yourself. And I think that's kind of the first step, is where we need to make a change with termination for medical reasons, because you shouldn't be sent away and left to try and sort that yourself at all. After a few hours, the abortion clinic actually called me back and said, we've actually had a discussion, and because of your complex gynecological history, we aren't happy to perform your surgery here. So that was it. I was completely left. I had nowhere to get a surgical termination. you know, only a couple of weeks earlier, I'd been told that I absolutely couldn't have a vaginal birth because of what had happened with my first son. So I was literally just thinking, what on earth, you know, am I going to be forced to carry this baby now? Am I going to be forced to carry and wait until, you know, his foot completely ruptures the sac and I bleed to death? You know, it's all these things go through your head. And the whole time I'm having to show up and be mum to my 3-year-old and pretend nothing's happening because, you know, his little world couldn't be rocked by this. And I was really determined that that wouldn't happen. So it was 2 weeks of back and forth to the hospital. And I just said, look, this is so negligent on your behalf. You're sending me away to have a procedure and the clinic won't perform it on me. And on top of that, I'd actually been present when my nephew was stillborn years earlier. And obviously that had really scarred me. And I just couldn't be in a room and give birth to a baby that never cried. I'd been in a room where that had happened and I just couldn't do it, you know, especially with all I'd been through with Jax. So it was 2 weeks of constant battling with the hospital, begging them. Literally, I mean, I've still got the emails. I was begging them to terminate my son.
So
I mean, you say that now and it's like, oh, but yeah, it was an awful 2 weeks.
I just, you know, that my heart is breaking with yours as you tell me your story.
I do.
Because although our stories are different, our heart, you know, we're both heartbroken. And as you tell me your story, my heart is breaking for you. I really, that part between when you remembering the sonographer's face, you know, the face of the person that gives you the news, you're right, that is, you know, she just looked at me and just said, I can't not tell you what I see. I wasn't supposed to be there for the intense scan that day, but she just said, I can't not tell you what I can see. And she went from not being able to see me to clearing her diary and having me back within the hour to do a full like a full screening for me. And it was really difficult because on the scan our baby was moving its arms and legs and moving around, and I remember even I was laughing and I was going, oh look, and you know, and the heart, and I was going, oh, it's amazing. And then I was like, oh no, but this isn't amazing, because that's not what we're doing right now. We're confirming what they already think. And it's
that realization, isn't it, that keeps kicking in.
And it's that mad, yeah, it's like pennies are dropping one by one, and then there's that moment of you're in there seeing your baby, and then that moment of, oh no, we're confirming what we suspect, you know. Oh, it's just it's awful. And then that having to try and plan it yourself, you do feel very alone. I spent 2 or 3 days just ringing around places, trying to explain what I needed, and I even booked it at 2 places and got a confirmation email back. And even though I'd explained my situation in detail, the confirmation email came back saying, here are the details for your abortion. And I just felt like someone had kicked me in the throat, the heart and the gut simultaneously.
Yeah.
And I felt like screaming at my computer, no, I am not booking an abortion. That is not what's happening here. That's not what's happening here.
Language is so important around all this. I mean, I had a similar when I went to the early pregnancy unit about a week after the termination for a checkup. And, you know, it's a room that's full of pregnant women. And I turned up to the desk where they could all hear. And I said, I'm here for a scan. I had a termination for medical reasons. Like, I always very quickly followed it with for medical reasons. And the receptionist went, oh, what, you mean an abortion? And like, just all these women's heads just snapped round to me. And I said to her, no, I don't mean that actually, but kind of just,
Yeah.
crept away to my seat and sat there just crying hot, angry tears
Oh,
at that. And I thought, you work on an early pregnancy unit.
yeah.
You should know that language is so important.
Yeah. Uh, it's just, it's so difficult. And I don't know about you, but the most confusing time, all of it's awful, but one of the most confusing times for me is between knowing what had to happen and it happening.
Mm-hmm.
Was just so conflicting, because it was like I felt like I should automatically not feel pregnant anymore. I should automatically not look pregnant anymore. I should just be normal like that. That's what I felt
Mm-hmm.
should happen because of what was going to happen. But the truth is, I was still really feeling very pregnant. And I got very big very
Yeah.
quickly, actually, which I've gone on to learn from other people that have had babies with Edwards syndrome. They get very big very quickly. It seems to be a thing a few people have said to me. So I looked much more pregnant than I was actually, which when I was flying back from Dubai, like I shared with you, people are offering me a seat, the pregnancy seats, and I felt like I didn't deserve to take that seat.
Yeah.
But
Like you were a traitor.
yeah, but the truth was I was pregnant and my hips were killing me and I was exhausted because of everything that had just gone on. So, really, I had every right to take that seat, but I didn't take it. And even Gareth said to me, Emma, take the seat. I said, I can't take the seat. It's just these things become big things, right?
Huge.
Yeah.
They really do.
Very, very confusing. I shared with Zara before that I had to go into a shop. I'm laughing, it's not funny. I had to go into a shop and buy maternity jeans because I live in Dubai and had to fly back to London for the procedure because I had no warm trousers. So I went in and bought 3 pairs of maternity jeans, got congratulated on being pregnant by all of the staff, knowing full well I was just buying them to accommodate me coming back to the UK for a week to have a termination, when I knew that my baby's heart was still beating inside me. And yeah, just a minefield, isn't it?
It is. And I think all those little things seem little, but they're not. At the time, they're huge. And I think they all pile on top of you. They all pile on you until you do feel like you're drowning. And
yeah,
it's like we said, it's such a layered experience of grief, termination, because the bottom line is we did choose to end our babies' lives. If you take away the what, the why, and the how, that's what it comes down to. And that's the piece that so many women get stuck on. And they just can't move on from that. I told you I was very lucky that I had a counsellor throughout this who I was seeing because of what I'd been through with my firstborn. And honestly, without her, I would have drowned. I really would. But she helped me. It's like an onion. She helped me peel off those layers to get to the root of it, and the absolute core of that, which was my heartbreaking grief.
Yeah.
To not focus on the why, the how, and the where, just to actually focus on the fact that we had lost our so wanted son.
Yeah.
And that's what's at the core of it.
And I think every person that I've connected with that's gone through a termination for medical reasons, every single baby and every single decision, every single baby has been so desperately wanted. Whether you've gone through fertility treatment or not. Now, fertility treatment adds a whole other layer to the hope and the loss roller coaster. But every baby, regardless of that, so wanted. Every mother has stepped into that scan excited to see the heartbeat and see that and take home their scan picture. They don't walk into that to be told it's the end of the road, really, for you and this pregnancy and this baby. So there's a huge shock factor that takes place. But the other thing that I know, because I've also been learning that some women are judged, they're not loved, they're not held through this, is that I've not connected with one woman that hasn't made this decision with the utmost love and the highest heartbreak in equal measure.
Yeah.
This decision is made with love and heartbreak in equal measure in a monumental scale.
Yeah.
And every single woman that goes through this deserves nothing less than being loved, held, listened to, and not judged for any part of it. They deserve no less, not one woman. Doesn't matter where you come from, doesn't matter what your beliefs are, that's what you deserve. So if anyone's listening, whether you've managed to share your story, Zara shared with me that some women have gone years, 8 years, 9 years, and not told a soul what's happened to them, and not told a soul that they've lost their baby and their baby has had to die. If you're listening to this, just know that you deserve no less than love, being held, and just people just holding you tight. That's all you deserve. You don't deserve anything less than that. Like, I just really...
Do you know what I found really interesting, like with hearing you say that? I thought to myself, I spoke out about losing Jessie because my son's diagnosis was incompatible with life. I do wonder if I would have been so outspoken if I did have a diagnosis that meant my child would live. I do wonder that, because I think that adds another layer of complexity to the whole situation. And I did in the early days when I spoke out very openly, because I naively didn't expect to get backlash, because I thought, yeah, but my son wasn't going to live, so there's no backlash here. He wasn't going to live. And there was very quickly plenty of people to say, but you ended his life. There was so many people that were kind of not that kind. But it didn't stop me at all, because I saw the bigger picture, and I was getting contacted by hundreds and hundreds of women who were clearly in need of this to become a topic. And I did think to myself, you're having a go at me because I terminated. Say I did wait 2 more weeks and he died inside me, and I had to have an operation, possibly an operation because of my complex history, or, I birthed him. The support I would have received would have been so different to what I did receive. And I just don't think that's right.
No,
I don't think you should expect every woman to wait for the baby to die to then go, oh, okay, so now I'll support you.
Yeah.
That's just not humane to do that to women.
And it's not anyone else's place either to make that call on another person's situation. I shared with Zara before this call, obviously we've both had termination for medical reasons, but our stories are different, and the diagnosis of our babies is different. Ours was Edwards syndrome. Now, I shared with Zara that in a baby loss, pregnancy and baby loss forum, I shared my story, and it was in that week limbo between diagnosis and what had to happen. And in that week I reached out because I was looking to find support, find connection, everything, the appointments were made, everything's happening. And because there is a chance that Edward's babies can be born alive, and in very rare circumstances they can go on to live past the age of 1. I did receive messages from a lady. I wasn't personally in the chat at the time, but with showing me pictures of a living girl with Edwards syndrome. Now, what we have to understand is with these in utero diagnosis, there's no situation that's going to be the same. There's no diagnosis that's going to be the same, and everybody's baby will be on the spectrum of that diagnosis at a very different level. And unless you were like you rightly said, Zara, in that room, receiving a diagnosis, in my case, receiving genetic testing back, getting this, getting that. If you weren't there, you won't actually know the intricacies of that baby's health. So it's really important that we stay in our own lane, and we just, as women, hold each other.
Yeah.
Because there's not one woman I've met that has done this out of anything other than love, with the most heartbreak, really.
That's it. Yeah. We don't, somebody said to me early on, you took all that baby's pain so he would never know any. And I really did hold on to that, because it's true. And that gives me such comfort. And, if they'd have turned around and said to me, you're going to have the most horrific pregnancy, you're going to be so ill, you're going to be on bed rest, you're going to, God forbid, you're going to have to lose your limbs. I'd have done anything if I could have had my son born healthy. But that was never, ever going to happen, ever. So, you just can't, don't judge people. And I try and see the good in everyone. But, that lady sending those pictures, there's just no good there.
It's not helpful. And
no.
It's not helpful. And I think if someone chooses to share their story with you, what we need to do is just hold that person. And if you are, you just need to hold that person, because that's all they need in that moment. And the other thing that I'd like to touch on with you is the the baby's remains, the baby's body. When I phoned around the clinics, and Zara reached out to me and she said, Emma, please just try and do this in a hospital, please. And I remember reading the message, and at the time I was shell shocked, and I didn't really know what you were talking about, what you meant, but I quickly discovered what you meant. And I asked the question, I said, what's going to happen with my baby when you take it out of me? And it's going to go in the medical waste incinerator, or you can have it back in a plastic tub in your hand. And I just couldn't get my head around that at all. And I then said, will Gareth be able to be with me? Oh, he'll be with you before. I said, what about when I wake up? Oh no, you'll see him again when you're dressed and you're signing the checkout paperwork to walk out the front door. I said, so hang on, I'm going to go through, I understand in the immediate recovery section he can't be with me, but once I'm a bit more with it, and then there's like an hour and a half where you sort of get yourself together before you can get up, get dressed, all of that type of stuff, deal with the bleeding, everything else that's going on physically for you and emotionally, I've got to do that alone. And they said, well, yes, you'll see him in the office when you're fully dressed signing the discharge paperwork. I said, so what? Basically, I'm not going to see him till I walk out and I'm dressed with a pot of my baby's remains in my hand. Like, is this what you're telling me?
Barbaric.
Yeah, this is what they were telling me. And at that point, I'll be honest, I completely lost it. I'd just come back from the shop having bought maternity trousers, being congratulated for being pregnant. My hips were killing me. And I just lost it. I was just sat on the sofa here. I just lost it completely. And I just said to Gareth, I can't do this. I need you with me. I cannot do this on my own. We've been very fortunate here in Dubai with COVID, because he's been able to go to every appointment with me, every fertility appointment. I know in the UK, that's not happening for women right now. My heart goes out to them. I think it is completely wrong. Especially for anyone that's had loss before. Actually, anyone that's had a pregnancy, you need your person, whether it's your partner, your mum, your support partner, whoever. Doing that on your own is just, when people go to the pub, it's just not okay. But anyway, it's a whole different topic. And I just said, I can't do this on my own. And I certainly can't be then just walking out to you with In my head, I'm like, what, like an ice cream tub? Like what? That I've been told
it's
same. I've been told it's not see-through, which is like, okay, a blessing. That's something. But actually it's not okay. This isn't going to work for me.
It's not. And before COVID hit, I was actually in the middle of getting together a bit of a campaign to try and get it into Parliament and to get it heard, at least, that women should not be sent to an abortion clinic. And I'll be honest, I don't think many people know that it goes on. I have spoken to so many, experts and people within the infertility community, and they do not know that it goes on. No. And they couldn't get their head around it. They were like, hang on, so if you miscarry, the hospital kind of take care of you and do your paperwork. But if you choose to terminate and you want a surgical procedure, you go to an abortion clinic. It's like, yeah, that's what they do. And during, obviously lockdown has thrown a huge spanner in the works. And during lockdown, I had 2 ladies contact me, actually. One had been sent from Cambridge to an abortion clinic near Brighton. I mean, miles away, was told her husband couldn't go anywhere near the clinic, blah, 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 blah. And I helped both of them fight the hospital, and the hospital performed the termination in the end. And again, it was like that kind of pat on the back win. And then you're like, actually, no one wins in this.
No,
nobody wins in this. It's not it's not a victory at all. It just means that you are being cared for where you should be cared for.
Yeah.
But you were saying about partners aren't allowed in. I actually had a miscarriage during lockdown and was on my own when they told me the heart had stopped.
Oh, Zara.
And it was the whole thing of I was in the same room where they told me about Jessie, and they told me, I've had 3 miscarriages since Jessie. And each time you're in the same room, but Lex has always been there. My husband has been there. But this time I was on my own in the room, laying on the same bed. And it's really damaging. And then you see people, you can have 6 people together in a pub and you're like, no, that's actually not okay.
It's not okay. And I mean, it's a whole other topic, but it is not okay. Yeah. It's not okay. And I don't even like to say, especially for those that have had loss before, but it is the complex, the CPTSD around pregnancy loss, baby loss, fertility treatment, that then goes on to the next pregnancy and onto the next pregnancy, which is it's unavoidable. It does make things so much worse. But even guess what? A brand new mother, a second time mother, it doesn't actually matter. You're so vulnerable when you're pregnant, trying to get pregnant, dealing with pregnancy loss. Your support person is like vital for your emotional, mental well-being. I'm so sorry you've had to go through that.
I think I said to you beforehand, I felt so well equipped to deal with my miscarriages because my termination cut me so deeply.
Yeah.
And I probably didn't realize that until I had my miscarriages. And, of course I was sad, but it completely felt manageable because it wasn't like a termination. And it's not to compare. I would never compare people's loss and grief or anything. There's no scale for it. But for me, termination was just horrific.
Yeah.
And I just think it's beyond what any parent should ever have to go through, ever.
And you're right, though, the added complexities of it falls down the cracks between miscarriage and terminations. It falls down the crack between those two things. But the point is, at the time, you are a pregnant, expecting mother. Whether you've got children already or not. I don't have any children. But in that moment, I was a pregnant, expecting mother.
Absolutely. You were a parent doing what you felt was the best for your child.
And then it's like, off you go. Now you have to go and just like do this assault course on your own and figure it out. And ARC were amazing. Sally at ARC,
they're incredible.
She was just so lovely and helped me to make sense of a senseless situation. But I mean, in the end, we managed to go into a hospital setting, and Gareth was able to be with me. And the hospitals have direct links with crematoriums and funeral homes. So the baby's remains were were taken, and my mum's actually, I'm back in Dubai now, but my mum's going to collect the ashes today.
Oh,
Yeah. So, you know, when I return at Christmas, I'll be able to have those. And
yeah.
it's just, I really feel for any parent that's in this position, because you've already got so much to navigate and you don't have a lot of time to do this, right? It's like
No.
you're going to do the most mental assault course ever in a
Mm-hmm.
really short space of time with your hands and legs tied together.
Yeah. And it's a race against the clock, because you know the inevitable, you know what's coming. And I was going through lots of things of every day I carried Jesse. I kept thinking, is he feeling pain today? Am I hurting him by am I hurting him by walking? Should I be sitting still? Well, does that hurt? It's all these things, because no one holds your hand.
No.
So you're just left to deal with it. And I think I'd just like to say to anyone who is listening, whether you've told people what you've been through or not, there is so much support that is confidential. So don't feel you have to be like I have and speak very openly about it to be heard. There are so many people. My inbox is always open, and I had a message today from a lady who lives in the Dominican Republic, whose baby has just been diagnosed with the same as Jessie, and she's not allowed an abortion, and she's petrified of carrying it. And it's all these things. But she said, I've literally researched this, and I've found you, and I hope you don't mind me messaging, because she has no one she can talk to in real life. And as sad as that is, there is so much support, and just confidential support there really is out there.
And I mean, ARC has been amazing, and I would recommend them to anybody that's listening. No matter what your choice, no matter what your pathway, you will find that you are supported, heard, held, and loved by these amazing people. But also, I mean, for me, I've had, like you have, had women just since I've posted about it, and that's not to say I'm with Zara. Everyone is different, and how you communicate or don't communicate or whatever is absolutely okay, whatever you do. Just make sure that you are getting support, because just Google the hashtag termination for medical reasons, TFMR, and you'll be surprised at the amount of accounts that are set up on Instagram, where people have set up specific accounts just for this experience. So they're sort of behind the account, but even that, there are women who are ready to hold you tight, and with no judgment, no anything. And so don't be afraid to Google that hashtag on Instagram. That's where I found you. That's where I found some amazing women, and just the power of a woman saying, me too, I get this.
That's it.
It is incredibly healing.
Yeah, and knowing you're not going to be judged. I always say that to me, the first step of me healing was to find someone else who'd been through it.
Yes.
And instantly that, oh my God, I've never heard of anyone else who's been through this, just went. And I'd heard one more person, and then that spiraled and spiraled and spiraled. And you're like, there's a whole kind of tribe of women out here. Over 5,000 termination for medical reasons happen a year. That's 14 a day. It's twice as common as stillbirth, yet it's still shrouded in secrecy, and it's so taboo. And it's just time that stopped.
I had a lady share her story with me that when her family and friends learnt what had happened to them, and I will say happen because it does just happen to you. It's not like we go out and think, I'd like this to happen to me today. This just happens to you, and it can happen to anybody as well. I'd like to stress that too. This isn't, it isn't always a genetic thing that's passed down. Sometimes these things just happen as the fetus develops inside. That she had been completely ostracized from her family and friends. I mean,
that's heartbreaking.
It really is. That is exactly right. It's completely heartbreaking and not okay, because I hope that anyone that's listening to this today can hear Zara and I, that this is not a decision that you make and then feel happy about it. This is not a decision anybody ever chooses to make. You are put in an impossible situation where you have to make the first and last and toughest parental decision while your baby's still inside you, and it's beyond hard and beyond heartbreaking.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you for sharing.
No, thank you.
With me today. We were speaking before, and I said, Zara, I feel like I could speak to you for about 100 years.
Chat.
And Zara is using her voice because her background is an actress, and she knows that by using her voice it will create change. And by you using your voice, I found you, and I found ARC, and you know, it's that ripple effect. And by you sharing that, you didn't even know that you'd helped me before I'd even spoken to you, but you'd already helped me. So I'm eternally grateful. Thank you.
No, you're more than welcome. Welcome to the club. It's the worst club with the best members, trust me.
No, the worst club.
It is. But
with amazing people. So I'm very grateful to have met you in the worst club ever.
Yeah, welcome. I'll send you a badge in the post.
And where can we find you, Zara?
So I'm on Instagram as Little Norfolk Cottage.
Okay, lovely. Thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you, Emma.